Noah pushed open the heavy glass door of the bank with both hands, using his shoulder for extra help because the door felt heavier than he expected. He looked small under the tall ceiling and bright lights. The place was quiet in that serious way banks always seem to be, with people standing in lines looking at their phones, some filling out forms on tall desks, and others seated, waiting for their number to be called. He clutched a white envelope in his hand, the one his teacher told him to give directly to someone at the front counter. It was a simple task, and he didn't mind doing it. He liked helping adults when he could, and his mom trusted him enough to run small errands like this. He took a few steps inside, glancing around to figure out where to go. He didn't come here often, so nothing felt familiar. His mom had dropped him off outside because she needed to make a quick phone call before heading to a meeting. She told him she would circle back in a few minutes, and he didn't mind. He actually felt proud she trusted him with something that looked important. The envelope wasn't heavy or anything, but it carried that feeling of responsibility as he stepped forward. He saw a woman behind a counter. She wore a neat jacket with a name tag and had her hair pulled back tightly. Her expression looked serious, but he assumed adults in banks were supposed to look that way. He walked in her direction, searching for signs that might tell him where to drop the envelope. He didn't see anything that said front desk, so he moved slowly, trying not to disturb anyone. The woman behind the counter, the bank manager, watched him right away. She noticed every step he took, every glance, every time he slowed down to look at something. She didn't see a kid running a simple errand. She didn't see a harmless boy with a school envelope in his hand. All she saw was someone who didn't look like he belonged inside a bank by himself. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she lifted her chin in suspicion. Noah didn't notice her watching him like that. He was still trying to figure out which counter to approach. He walked closer to the roped line where adults waited, thinking maybe he should ask someone there. But he didn't want to bother people who already looked busy, so he glanced toward the desks in the corner instead. The manager stepped out from behind her counter and walked toward him with a fast, sharp stride. The click of her heels echoed louder than the soft noises in the room, and Noah heard it just as she stopped in front of him. She looked down at him, folding her arms in a way that felt more like she was blocking him than greeting him. "Can I help you?" she asked, but her tone didn't sound helpful at all. It sounded more like she was waiting for him to justify why he was inside the building. Noah lifted the envelope a little. "Hi. I'm supposed to give this to someone at the front. My school sent it. My mom said she cut him off before he could finish. Where is your parent or guardian?" "My mom is right outside," he said politely. "She dropped me off." "I just need to give this. This is not a place for children to wander around," she interrupted again. "You need to leave." He blinked, unsure what he did wrong. "I'm not wandering," he said softly. "I'm supposed to," I said. "You need to leave," she repeated, her voice firm and louder than before. A few customers turned their heads at the tone she used. She didn't seem to care. She stepped closer, forcing Noah to take a small step back. "If you're not here with an adult, you have no reason to be in this bank." Noah felt heat rise in his face, not from anger, but confusion. He tried once more, holding out the envelope as proof of his purpose. "I just have to drop this off. It's for the bank. My school asked me to." Her eyes didn't even follow the envelope. "I don't know why you're really here," she snapped, "but you cannot stay. This is private property. You need to go out." She pointed toward the door as if he were causing trouble, even though he hadn't done anything except walking quietly. Holding an envelope, he lowered his hand slowly. "I'm not trying to cause. That's enough," she said sharply. "If you don't leave right now, I'll call security." People in the waiting area exchanged glances. No one spoke, but several looked uncomfortable. Noah noticed their eyes drifting between him and the manager. He felt smaller with each passing second. He wasn't used to adults speaking to him like this. Teachers talked to him with kindness. His neighbors greeted him warmly, and workers in stores usually smiled at him. But this woman looked at him like he was doing something wrong. "I can leave," he said quietly, "but I really need to give this to someone." "It's from," the manager held up her hand. "I'm done repeating myself," she said. "You need to go, or I'm calling the police." He stared at her, uncertain if she was serious. Her face said she was. It was tense and unkind, as if she was preparing for a problem that didn't exist. Noah didn't know what to do. His mom had trusted him with this task, and turning back without completing it felt like failing. But the manager didn't seem willing to listen. He looked around again, hoping maybe another staff member would come help him, someone with a calmer voice. But everyone behind the counters looked busy or intimidated by the manager's presence. No one stepped forward. No one invited him to speak. No one even smiled. "I'm not here to bother anyone," Noah murmured. "I just need to drop." The manager's voice rose suddenly, making even more people look up. "That's it. I'm calling the police."
Oh.
Noah froze. Police for what? He hadn't touched anything he shouldn't. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't even taken more than a few steps inside. He couldn't understand how something so simple had turned into something so big. The manager reached for the phone on her desk. Her movements were dramatic, exaggerated in a way that made it clear she wanted everyone to see she was taking action. She spoke into the receiver in a quick, urgent tone, describing him as a minor causing a disturbance. Noah felt his stomach twist. He didn't know how someone could see a disturbance. Where there was none, he stood still because he didn't know what else to do. He didn't run. He didn't argue. He just held the envelope close to his chest, gripping it with both hands now. His heart beat faster, not because he felt guilty, but because he felt completely misunderstood. The manager hung up the phone and looked at him as if she had accomplished something important. She stepped back and crossed her arms. "The officers will handle this," she said. "You should have left when I asked." Noah didn't reply. He didn't trust his voice not to crack. The room grew quieter, the kind of quiet that happens when everyone is waiting for something they're not sure is right. A few customers whispered to one another. One woman shook her head with a disappointed frown. Another man looked like he wanted to speak but didn't, probably afraid of getting involved. Noah stood near the middle of the room, not sure where he was supposed to go. If he stepped outside, the police might think he ran. If he stayed, the manager might accuse him of something else. He wished he could call his mom, but she had told him to stay focused and drop the envelope off quickly. He didn't want to trouble her during her meeting. Minutes passed slowly. He felt every second. His fingers tightened around the envelope. He swallowed hard, trying to keep calm, the way his mom always taught him. She told him many times that staying calm could keep a bad situation from getting worse. He breathed deeply, hoping officers would listen to him better than the manager had. Sirens didn't sound. But soon 2 police officers walked through the door. Their expressions were neutral, not aggressive. They approached the manager first, and she launched into an explanation filled with dramatic details about how he was wandering, refusing to leave, and acting suspicious. She didn't mention that he was holding an envelope the entire time. She didn't mention that he spoke respectfully. She didn't mention that he tried to explain himself several times. The officers nodded as she talked, but their eyes floated toward Noah. They seemed confused because he didn't look like someone causing problems. He looked like a kid who didn't know why adults were making such a big deal over him, standing quietly inside a bank. One officer walked over to Noah and lowered his voice. "Hey buddy, how's it going? Can you tell me why you're here?" Noah relaxed a tiny bit. This voice sounded gentler. He held up the envelope again. "My school asked me to give this to someone at the bank," he said. "That's all. I wasn't doing anything else." The officer took a careful look at the envelope and nodded. "And your mom knows you're here?" "She dropped me off," he said. "She's outside. She said she would come back in a few minutes." The officer looked over at his partner. They both exchanged a small look the kind adults give each other when something doesn't add up. Not with the child's story, but with the manager's. The officer smiled gently. "Would you like to call your mom so she knows what's going on?" he asked. Noah hesitated. He didn't want to bother her, but the situation was already out of his hands. He nodded slowly. "Okay," the officer said. "Let's call her so she can come inside." The manager's expression twisted slightly, as if she hadn't expected the officers to treat him kindly. She stood stiffly near her counter, tapping her foot. Annoyed that the situation wasn't unfolding the way she imagined, Noah followed the officer to a quieter corner while the officer dialed his mom's number. He waited, clutching the envelope, hoping she wouldn't be upset. He just wanted this moment to be over. The call rang once, then twice. Then his mom answered. She didn't know it yet. But the next few minutes were about to change everything inside that bank. Noah watched the officer hold the phone to his ear while he waited quietly beside him. His hands were still wrapped around the envelope, even though his fingers felt sore from gripping it for so long. He didn't want to let go of it. In his mind, dropping the envelope would feel like dropping the one thing that proved why he was inside the bank in the first place. And right now, that reason mattered more than ever. The officer nodded as someone picked up on the other end. "Hello, ma'am," he said politely. "This is Officer Hernandez, calling from the bank branch on Central Street. Your son is here with us, and everything is okay. But we think it would be good if you could come inside for a moment." Noah could hear his mom's voice through the phone, even though he couldn't make out the exact words. He recognized the tone, though concerned, alert, sharp in the way she sounded only when something felt wrong. She never panicked, but she always reacted fast when it came to him. The officer nodded again. "Yes, ma'am, he's all right. He hasn't done anything wrong. When you arrive, ask for me. I'll be near the front." He ended the call and put the phone back into his pocket. Then he looked at Noah with a calm expression. "She's on her way," he said. "She sounded worried, but she's coming right now." Noah nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He felt embarrassed, not because of the officers, but because his mom now had to interrupt her day for something that should have taken 2 minutes. He didn't want her to think he'd messed something up. He didn't even know how to explain what happened, because he didn't fully understand it himself. The officer crouched down slightly, so he was closer to Noah's eye level. "You're not in trouble," he said. "I just want you to know that. We're here to make sure everything is handled the right way." Noah nodded again. He appreciated the officer's tone. It made him feel a little safer, even though his chest still felt tight. Meanwhile, on the other side of the lobby, the manager crossed her arms and tapped her foot impatiently. She didn't seem relieved that Noah's mom was coming. Instead, she looked irritated, almost offended that the officers were treating him gently. She moved back behind her counter, but kept her eyes fixed on him, as if she expected him to suddenly cause chaos in the quiet room. Noah kept still. He didn't want to give her any reason to think he was doing something wrong. He stood near the officer, hoping his presence would stop her from snapping at him again. People in the waiting area still looked uneasy, but some of them had softened expressions now. They watched him with sympathy instead of suspicion. The minutes felt slow. The bank's clocks ticked loudly, though they probably always sounded like that. Noah just noticed it more now. Each tick felt like a reminder that time was dragging on. Eventually, through the glass doors, Noah saw his mom walking quickly toward the entrance. She wasn't running, but she moved with purpose, the way she did when she was worried but trying to stay calm. Her coat swung behind her with each step. She pushed the door open faster than he had earlier. Her eyes scanned the room instantly. They skipped past customers, staff, and the officers before they landed on Noah. She went straight to him and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice firm but gentle. She looked him over as she spoke, making sure he wasn't hurt or shaken. He nodded. "I'm okay," he whispered. She exhaled slowly. Then she turned to the officers. "What happened?" The officer who had called her explained everything clearly and calmly. He didn't exaggerate. He didn't soften the details. He simply stated what they had been told, what they saw, and how Noah behaved. When he finished, Noah's mom nodded, absorbing each detail. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't jump to conclusions. But her eyes grew more focused, almost sharp. 8. When she turned toward the manager straightened up, trying to regain control of the situation. She walked over with quick steps, forcing a stiff smile that didn't look sincere. "I'm glad you arrived," the manager said in a tone that pretended to be polite. "Your son was wandering around the bank without supervision, and he refused to leave when I asked him. I had to follow procedure." Noah's mom didn't respond right away. She studied the manager carefully, as if she was trying to read every word that hadn't been spoken aloud. "My son came here to drop off an envelope from his school," she said finally. "That was his only purpose." "He tried to tell you that." The manager shrugged slightly. He was behaving suspiciously. Noah's mom glanced at her son. "Did you show her the envelope?" "I tried," he said softly, "but she wouldn't look." The officer nodded to confirm. "We saw him holding it when we arrived." The manager's jaw tightened. "We have protocols to keep this building safe. Children alone inside a bank can create issues." One of the customers waiting nearby let out a quiet sigh, loud enough for everyone to hear. Another customer whispered something to the person next to them, shaking their head. Noah's mom kept her voice steady. "Did he touch anything he shouldn't?" "No," the manager said. "Did he speak disrespectfully to you?" "No," she repeated. "Did he raise his voice? Cause trouble? Interrupt anyone?" "No," the manager said again, this time slower. "So he stood quietly," Noah's mom said, "holding an envelope, looking for someone to hand it to, and that was enough reason to call the police." The manager stiffened. "I felt uncomfortable with how he was walking around." "Walking," Noah's mom repeated softly. "Inside a public bank. Looking for help." "Procedures," the manager began. "Your procedures," Noah's mom interrupted gently, "should include listening before assuming." The room felt heavier. Even the officers stayed silent, letting her handle the conversation. Noah felt his mom's hand squeeze his shoulder again. Just enough to let him know she was there. The manager exhaled sharply, frustrated that the situation wasn't shifting in her favor. "Look, perhaps he didn't mean any harm," she said, her tone thinning. "But we can't have loitering." "He wasn't loitering," Noah's mom said. "He was delivering something you refused to look at." Customers nodded subtly. The energy in the room had shifted. It was no longer Noah standing alone against the manager's assumptions. People around him could finally see what was happening. The officer stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said to Noah's mom, "if you'd like to file a complaint, we can help with that." "You have every right." But Noah's mom didn't answer immediately. She wasn't someone who reacted without thinking. She looked around the bank again, observing the staff, the customers, the officers, finally the manager. Then she crouched down next to her son so they could speak quietly. "Did she scare you?" she asked softly. Noah nodded, but only a little. "I didn't know why she thought I was doing something bad." Her eyes softened. "You didn't do anything wrong, and I'm proud of you for staying calm." He felt a small wave of relief wash through him. She stood again and faced the officer. "Thank you for treating him with respect," she said. "I appreciate that." Then she turned to the manager. "I'd like to speak with your branch director." The manager blinked. "I'm the highest authority here today." Noah's mom nodded slowly, almost as if she already knew that. "Then I'll speak with you," she said. "But we're not going to do it in front of customers." She looked at one of the other staff members, a younger employee, who had been watching the situation quietly with worried eyes. "Is there a private office available?" Noah's mom asked her gently. The employee nodded quickly. "Yes, of course." The manager hesitated, then followed. Noah stayed with one of the officers while his mom walked with the employee toward a small office room with glass walls. The manager trailed behind reluctantly. Through the glass, Noah could see the three of them talking. His mom remained calm, using her hands as she spoke sometimes, pointing at the envelope, then at the front area where he had been standing. The manager looked defensive at first, then uncomfortable, then tense. The younger employee looked embarrassed, almost apologetic. The officer standing beside Noah leaned down and said, "Your mom seems like she handles situations well." "She does," Noah whispered. "She always does." After several minutes, the door to the office opened. His mom stepped out first, walking straight to him. She crouched down again so they were eye level. "We're leaving now," she said gently. "And you're not in trouble?" He nodded, relieved. Was she still mad? His mom shook her head slowly. She was more confused than mad. Noah didn't know what that meant exactly, but he trusted her. The manager stayed in the doorway, her expression stiff and unreadable. She didn't look triumphant. She didn't look confident. She looked uneasy, so something she hadn't expected had just happened inside that office. Noah's mom thanked the officers again, then took Noah's hand and walked him toward the exit. Customers watched them leave with quiet respect, some nodding at them softly as they passed. When they stepped outside, Noah finally felt the cold air on his skin, fresh and sharper than the air inside. He breathed in deeply. His mom held his hand gently. "Let's go home," she said. But what Noah didn't know yet was that the conversation inside that office had only been the beginning. The manager had no idea who his mom really was, and she would soon learn something that would change everything inside that bank. When Noah and his mom reached their car, he felt a small wave of relief settle in. He climbed into the passenger seat while she took a moment outside, hands resting on the roof as she breathed in slowly. She didn't look angry. She looked focused, like she was piecing together something in her mind before she got behind the wheel. When she finally sat down, she didn't start the car right away. Instead, she turned toward Noah. "Tell me exactly what happened," she said softly. He explained everything: how he walked in, looked for someone to help, how the manager spoke to him, how she didn't want to look at the envelope, and how she called the police, even though he said he wasn't doing anything wrong. He didn't embellish anything. He didn't add extra details. He just told the truth. His mom listened without interrupting. She leaned back slightly when he finished and closed her eyes for a moment. "Okay," she said quietly. "Thank you for telling me." She started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, but her mind was somewhere else. Noah could tell. She tapped the steering wheel lightly, a habit she had whenever she was thinking deeply. "Are you mad?" he asked cautiously. She glanced at him and shook her head. "Not at you. Never at you. I'm upset about how you were treated, but I need to handle this the right way." He nodded slowly. He didn't fully understand what the right way meant, but he trusted her. She always found the right way. The drive home was quiet for a few minutes until his mom finally spoke again. "I have a meeting today," she said. "I'm going to take you with me." Blinked. "With you? To your office?" "Yes," she said. "I don't want to leave you alone after all that, and there's something I need to take care of." Noah didn't argue. He liked going to her office sometimes. It always felt big and important, and the people there were surprisingly friendly, even though everything looked so serious. They reached home only long enough for Noah to drop off his school things and grab a snack. Then they were back in the car, heading toward the tall building his mom worked in. The closer they got, the more he noticed something unusual. His mom was quiet in a different way. She was calm, but there was something strong underneath that calmness, like she was bracing for something. When they reached the building, the security guard at the front smiled warmly at them. "Good afternoon," he said, nodding at Noah. "Good to see you again." Noah gave a small smile back. His mom returned the greeting and headed toward the elevator. She swiped her badge, and the elevator took them to one of the highest floors in the building. The doors opened to a wide hallway with bright lighting and clean floors. People passing by smiled or nodded, double quotes, "Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon. Welcome back." Some even smiled at Noah. One woman said, "Hey there, young man," with a friendly wave as they walked. Noah leaned closer. "Does everyone know you here?" His mom smiled gently. "I work with them every day." They reached the large office at the end of the hallway. The door had her name on it, followed by a title. Noah had seen it before, but he never paid attention to the meaning behind the words. Today he looked more carefully. His mom opened the door and let him inside. The office was spacious, with tall windows that showed the city below. She motioned for him to sit on a soft chair near her desk. "I won't take long," she said. "Just stay here, okay?" He nodded. She sat at her desk and began typing quickly. Her face stayed calm, her movements precise. She was sending emails, making calls, checking documents, things he didn't fully understand. But as he watched her work, something inside him shifted. He always knew she had an important job, but today he realized she carried more responsibility than he'd ever imagined. She finished her calls and stood. "All right," she said. "Let's go." "Where?" he asked. "To the branch." Noah blinked. "The same bank?" "Yes." He didn't argue. He grabbed the envelope from her desk. He'd kept it with him the whole time, and followed her out. They drove back to the bank. But this time Noah wasn't nervous. He was curious. His mom looked focused again, but not stressed. She looked prepared when they pulled into the parking lot. She got out calmly and opened Noah's door. "Stay close," she said gently. He nodded. Inside the bank, the atmosphere shifted instantly. The same customers, the same counters, the same buzz of quiet conversations. But this time, heads turned the moment she stepped inside. Maybe it was her confidence. Maybe it was the way she carried herself. Or maybe it was simply because she walked in with purpose. The younger employee from earlier noticed them first. Her eyes widened slightly, and she hurried around the counter. "Hello?" she said nervously. "Can I help you?" "Yes," Noah's mom said plainly. "I'd like to speak with your manager again." The younger employee nodded quickly. She didn't seem surprised. She seemed anxious. She practically jogged toward the back office, Noah. His mom waited near the front. The manager came out with a stiff expression, same fake smile she had used earlier. "You're back," the manager said. "Is there something else you need?" "Yes," Noah's mom said, "but not out here." The manager hesitated, but she nodded. This way, they went into the same office as before. Noah sat in the same chair, while the two women sat across from each other. This time, Noah noticed something different. The manager didn't look confident. She looked uncomfortable, as if she could sense something was off but didn't know what. Noah's mom folded her hands calmly. "I'm not here to argue with you," she began. "I'm here to explain something." The manager nodded awkwardly. "Of course, this morning," she continued, "my son came here to deliver a school document. A harmless task. Instead of helping him or listening to him, you assumed he was doing something wrong." The manager stiffened but didn't interrupt. "You said you were following procedure," Noah's mom added. "But calling the police on a child without first trying to understand the situation is not a procedure in this company. And assuming the worst of someone simply because they don't look the way you expect them to look is not a procedure either." The manager swallowed hard. I was trying to protect the staff." "From what?" Noah's mom asked gently. "From a boy holding an envelope?" The manager had no answer. Noah's mom leaned slightly forward. "You said you are the highest authority in the branch today. Is that right?" "Yes," the manager said quietly. "Well," Noah's mom said, "I am the highest authority in the entire company." The office fell painfully silent. The manager's eyes widened. "I'm sorry, what?" "My name," she said calmly, "is on the documents you process every day. On the training manuals you hand out to new hires. On the policies you referenced earlier. I am the CEO of this bank." The manager's face lost all color. "I don't expect you to treat people well just because I'm your employer," Noah's mom continued. "I expect you to treat people well because it's your job. Because this place serves the public. All of the public." Manager clasped her hands tightly. I didn't know that's the point," Noah's mom said softly. "You shouldn't need to know who someone's parent is to treat them with basic respect." Noah watched the manager's face crumble. She wasn't angry now. She wasn't even defensive. She looked scared in a way that showed she finally understood the weight of what she had done. "You put my son in a situation he didn't deserve," Noah's mom said. "And you created a scene that frightened customers, embarrassed your staff, and wasted police time. That is a serious issue." "I'm so sorry," the manager whispered. "I'm sure you are," Noah's mom said. "But apologies don't erase actions. They only start the process of fixing them." The manager nodded, tears forming in her eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. Noah's mom stood. "You will be contacted by HR later today. Until then, I suggest you reflect on how you reached your decisions this morning." She took Noah's hand and gently guided him toward the door. The manager remained frozen in her chair, unable to speak. When they stepped into the lobby again, the younger employee looked at them with wide eyes, as if she sensed something huge had just happened behind those glass walls. Noah's mom didn't explain. She didn't need to. She held Noah's hand. And together they walked out of the bank for the second time that day. But this time, something was different. This time, The balance of the room felt changed, reshaped, realigned, and the consequences of that change were only beginning. The moment Noah stepped out of the car with his mom, he could feel the weight of what was coming. The bank building stood in front of them like it was holding its breath. The people passing by barely noticed anything unusual. To them, it was just another weekday afternoon. But to Noah, it felt like he was walking back into a place that had already judged him once without even asking who he was or what he wanted. His mom placed her hand on his back. She didn't push him forward, just rested her palm there the way she did when he was younger, and she wanted him to know she was right behind him. "You ready?" she asked softly. He nodded, even though he wasn't sure. His stomach felt tight, but he didn't want her to worry. As they walked toward the entrance, he glanced over at her. To everyone else, she looked calm, straight shoulders, focused eyes, clean lines of her suit catching the sunlight. But Noah knew her well enough to see the tension in her jaw and the slow, careful breaths she kept taking. She wasn't just angry. She was disappointed, and that was the part that seemed to hurt her more than anything. Inside, the lobby was quieter than before. There were fewer people waiting, and the hum of conversations seemed lower, almost cautious. Maybe word had already spread. Maybe the staff had been told the CEO was coming. Noah didn't know. But he caught the nervous glances from a few employees as soon as they walked in. His mom didn't look around, the way most visitors did. She walked with purpose, heading straight toward the counter where everything had started. The same woman who had called the police was standing there. Her stiff expression loosened the moment she saw who had walked in beside Noah. Her eyes widened. She stepped back slightly, as if she needed space to steady herself. "Ma'am, I wasn't expecting you weren't expecting to see me?" Noah's mom asked calmly. "Or you weren't expecting to see the child you reported standing here unharmed?" The woman swallowed hard. I followed policy. I was only doing my job." Noah's mom looked at her with the kind of quiet control that didn't require raising her voice. "Let's be clear. You didn't follow policy. You followed an assumption." Noah lowered his eyes for a second, feeling a familiar heaviness in his chest. He wasn't sure if he should look at the woman or stay focused on his mom. His mom's voice stayed steady, firm without being loud. "Where is the branch supervisor?" she asked. The woman hesitated. "He's in his office. Should I call him?" "No," she said. "I'll see him myself." People were watching now, though politely trying to look like they weren't. Noah could feel their curiosity pressing in from every direction. He stayed close to his mom's side as they moved past the counter and toward the small hallway. A few employees stepped aside, unsure if they should greet her or stay silent, at the supervisor's door. She knocked once, firmly, and pushed it open. The supervisor stood from his desk immediately. He looked older, maybe in his early 50s, with a neat tie and papers stacked carefully in front of him, as if he had tried to make his workspace look more organized the second he heard she was coming. "Ma'am," he said quickly, "I apologize for the inconvenience today." She raised a hand slightly and he stopped speaking. "This isn't about inconvenience," she said. "I need to understand how my child walked into this bank with a simple school envelope and ended up sitting beside a police officer." The man opened his mouth, then closed it again. He cleared his throat. There was a misunderstanding. The employee believed. Did anyone ask him a question before making assumptions? She asked. Did anyone give him a moment to explain why he was here? He wasn't causing trouble. He wasn't raising his voice. He wasn't doing anything except standing quietly and trying to hand over an envelope. Noah shifted slightly, unsure if he should say something. He wanted his mom to know he was okay. He wanted the supervisor to know he hadn't done anything wrong. But he stayed silent, letting her handle things the way grown-ups did. The supervisor let out a slow breath. "I will speak with the employee. This won't happen again." "No," she replied, her tone sharpening just slightly. "You won't just speak to her. You're going to retrain your entire staff on how to treat every customer, especially young ones, with respect." He nodded quickly. "Of course, ma'am." "We can schedule A, and you're also going to review the call logs from today," she added. "I want to know exactly what was said, how it was said, and why the police were contacted before any attempt was made to talk to a 12-year-old boy. The man nodded again, this time more nervously. Understood. She stepped closer to his desk. I want you to understand something very clearly. My son came here today because he believed he could trust this place. He believed adults here would treat him the way they treat every other customer. Instead, he was judged before he even had a chance to speak. The supervisor looked down in shame. You're right. We failed him. We failed you. There was a long moment of silence. Noah watched his mom, seeing the strength in her posture, the way she refused to let anger take over. She was disappointed, yes, but she was also determined to fix what had been broken. After a moment, she stepped back. I expect a written report on my desk by tomorrow morning, she said. With a full explanation and a plan for correction. Yes, ma'am, he replied immediately. She turned toward the door, but paused. And one more thing, she added, without looking back. Next time you see a child walk through those doors, remember that he's someone's son, someone's trust, someone's responsibility. And she walked out, with Noah following a half-step behind. Back in the lobby, the woman from the counter stood frozen, as if waiting for what would come next. Noah's mom glanced at her, and the woman lowered her eyes. Do better, she said simply. The woman nodded quickly. I will. Noah could feel eyes watching them again as they walked toward the exit, but this time the looks weren't hostile. They were curious. Some were sympathetic. A few looked embarrassed. But Noah focused only on his mom's steady footsteps. Outside, the air felt cooler, like the world had been holding itself tight and was finally letting go. His mom took a deep breath and turned toward him. How are you feeling? She asked softly. Noah shrugged, not sure how to capture everything inside him. I'm okay, he said. Just tired. Ow. She touched his cheek gently. I'm proud of you, she said. You handled everything with so much patience. He looked down at the envelope still clutched in his hand. I didn't even get to drop this off. We'll take care of it, she said. But for now, let's go home. They walked toward the car, and Noah felt a strange mix of heaviness and relief. The day had been long, confusing, and scary in ways he didn't expect. But at least it was over. And even though the world had been unfair to him today, he knew his mom would always stand between him and anything that tried to hurt him. He didn't need to say it. She already knew it. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Noah glanced back at the bank building one last time. It didn't look different from the outside, but something had changed. Something had shifted, and somehow he knew the next time he walked into a place like that, he wouldn't be walking alone. The next morning, Noah woke to the quiet sound of birds outside his window and the soft hum of cars on the street. For a moment, he forgot everything that had happened the day before. It was just a new day, calm and ordinary. But as soon as he sat up and rubbed his eyes, the memory of the bank came rushing back. Like a movie replaying in the back of his mind, he sat there for a moment, thinking about the way the officer talked to him, the way the woman stared at him like he had done something wrong, and the way his mom stood in front of everyone without raising her voice. Everything felt sharper in the morning light, and yet a little more distant, like the edges had softened overnight. He got dressed slowly and made his way into the kitchen. His mom was already there, dressed for work, hair pulled back neatly. She stood near the stove, stirring something, but the way she held the spoon told him she wasn't really focused on cooking. She was thinking probably about yesterday, probably about the report she had demanded. When she heard him walk in, she turned and gave him a small smile. "Morning, baby." "Morning," he said, sliding into his usual seat. She set a bowl in front of him. "Eat something before school. You didn't eat much last night." He nodded and picked up his spoon. She sat across from him, sipping her coffee while watching him carefully, as if making sure he was actually okay and not just pretending. After a moment, she reached across the table and touched his wrist gently. "You didn't sleep well?" she asked. "Not really," he admitted. She nodded slowly. "I didn't either." There was a quiet stillness between them, not uncomfortable, just real. The kind of silence that fills the room when there's too much to say and neither person wants to make the other feel heavier than they already do. After breakfast, She walked him to the car. He appreciated it, even though he'd never admit it out loud. When they pulled up to his school, she put a hand on his shoulder before he got out. "Listen," she said softly. "What happened yesterday doesn't define you. You did nothing wrong. Not a single thing. Do you understand that?" He nodded, though a part of him still felt like he should have done something differently, even though he had no idea what that something could be. "And if you ever feel scared or unsure," she added, "I want you to tell me. I'll always be here first." This time, he nodded with more certainty. "I know." She squeezed his shoulder once. "Have a good day." He stepped out, closed the door, and watched her drive away. The morning sun warmed his face, and he took a deep breath before walking toward the school entrance. Inside the hallway, the noise of kids talking, laughing, and moving through their routines made the world feel normal again. Some of his friends waved him over. They talked about homework, weekend plans, and who brought what for lunch. No one knew what had happened at the bank. No one knew how heavy yesterday had felt. Noah didn't bring it up. He didn't want to. Not yet. At lunch, his teacher approached him. She was kind, with calm eyes and a gentle voice that never sounded rushed. She sat across from him while he ate and spoke quietly. Making sure no one else overheard, "I heard there was an issue at the bank yesterday," she said carefully. "Your mom called this morning just to let me know everything is resolved." Noah straightened in his seat. "Yeah," he said softly. "It was weird," she nodded. "I'm glad you're okay. And I want you to know you can always talk to me if you need to." He didn't say much, but he appreciated her words. It felt good to know that adults, other than his mom, cared about how he was doing. When school ended, he walked out to find his mom already waiting for him in the parking lot. She was on the phone, speaking in a firm but steady tone. Even from a distance, he could tell it was a work call. He got into the car quietly. She ended the call a moment later and turned to him with a faint smile. "How was your day?" "Better," he said. And he meant it. "Good," she said, exhaling with relief. "Mine was busy." He didn't ask for details, but she offered them anyway as she started the car. "The report from the bank came in this morning," she said. I reviewed it, sat up a little straighter. "What did it say?" "A lot," she replied. "More than I expected." She paused at a stop sign before continuing. "They admitted they mishandled the situation. They also included the recording of the call your mother made when she realized the police had been contacted. The supervisor wrote a personal apology addressed to you." Noah blinked. "To me, yes," she said. "Because you're the one they affected. You're the one they frightened. And you deserve acknowledgement." He didn't know what to say, so he just stared out the window. The world passed by in flashes of color trees, houses, cars, but his mind was stuck on the idea of someone writing to him directly, admitting they were wrong. "They're making changes," she added. "Real ones. Training, new guidelines, new steps to follow before calling authorities. It won't fix the past, but it will help the future." Noah nodded slowly. He liked that part. The idea that because of something that happened to him, someone else, some other kid, might not have to feel scared one day when they got home. He dropped his backpack by the door and sat on the couch while his mom prepared dinner. The late afternoon light made the room soft and warm. After a few minutes, she joined him, sitting beside him with her hands resting loosely in her lap. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. He leaned back against the cushions. "Yeah, I was proud of you yesterday," she said. "So proud. And not just because you stayed calm, but because even when things got confusing and unfair, you didn't lose who you are." He looked down, feeling heat rise in his cheeks. "I didn't do anything special." "You did," she said. "You stayed kind. You stayed respectful. And that takes strength." They sat in silence for a while. Noah wasn't sure how to respond. Compliments always made him feel a little shy, but this one felt deeper. Like it reached somewhere inside him he didn't show often. After dinner, he went to his room and pulled out the envelope that had caused everything. It was bent now from being held so long. He opened it carefully. Inside was a note from his teacher explaining a small fundraiser project the school was doing. Nothing complicated. Nothing dangerous. Just a simple message that had somehow turned into a storm. He stared at the note for a long moment, then folded it gently and placed it back in his drawer. Later that night, he heard a soft knock on his door. His mom peeked inside. "You brushing your teeth soon?" she asked, with a tiny smile. "Yeah," he said. She opened the door fully and came in, sitting at the edge of his bed. "One more thing," she said. "I want you to know that even on days like yesterday, days that feel confusing or unfair, you're not alone. You'll never be alone. I'll always stand with you." He nodded. "I know, Mom." She kissed his forehead gently. "Good, because that's never going to change." When she left the room, Noah lay back on his pillow and stared at the ceiling. The day had been long, but it felt lighter than the one before. Softer, more hopeful. Before he fell asleep, he thought about the bank, the police officer, the woman, the supervisor, the report, his mom's steady voice, and the way everything had slowly shifted into something different, something better. It wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't a magical fix, but it was real, and as he closed his eyes, he understood something important. Sometimes the world changes, not because of loud moments, but because of quiet courage from people who refused to let one unfair moment decide the rest of the story. He drifted to sleep with that thought resting gently in his mind, knowing tomorrow would come, and he would face it with the same steady strength his mom had taught him, one calm breath at a time.